lastly, to finish up with our cube, we are going to play around with rigid bodies and box colliders. So what we want to do is, with our shape selected, is go over to the Add Component button and click on it. And Physics. In the Game Design 1 course, everything we did was the Physics 2D property menu. We are now going to leave that alone and just click on Physics. They don't have Physics 3D. You'll never really see the word 3D, and that's because Unity was first developed for 3D work, and they added on 2D later. So that's why you don't see 3D. It'll just say Physics. So we're going to add a rigid body. And with the rigid body, this should look very similar if you're working with the 2D game. You will see the properties over here on the right. We have used gravity by default, so if you press play now, your shape, depending on if your camera is facing it or not, you may need to change the camera. So again, my cube there is microscopic compared to my camera, so I'm just going to zoom out a little bit and begin to move my camera. Again, you move the camera a lot like a object, so you could actually rotate to see the camera better from a certain angle, and move it up and move it down. Hold down the middle mouse button to bring it in closer until you actually find your object. It may be worthwhile temporarily to increase the size of your object, just so that you can see it better. So I think I'm going to do that. Just going to take it and click on the scale button and just enlarge it quite a bit more so it's not so hard to find in this particular tutorial. Now if I click on my main camera, it should be a little easier for me to find that shape, I think. So let me move it over so that it can potentially be in range of the camera. And we will, again, that middle mouse button is going to be important. You can see my camera is completely backwards here, so I'm just going to keep moving it back until it shows the object there. So let me move it even some now. The main camera I can bring closer. Still behind it. Okay, and I'm actually getting very close to my object, so you can see it's starting to show up in my little camera view. And so now if I were to press play, I can actually see it in the window, and it will disappear because we have gravity applied. So take a second and position your camera so it is at least in front of your object before we move on. What I'm going to do temporarily is turn gravity off on my cube so that when I press play, it now stays on the screen. Okay, so there it is, right there in front. You can always rotate the object if you don't want to see two sides from the beginning, but all that matters later when we actually set up our world and we have space and it all makes more sense. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on, or unchecked gravity, use gravity. And if I want my box to not move at all, I'm going to say freeze its rotation on its X and Y, Z axis, and actually just freeze it in place. So I'm just checking all of those for X, Y, and Z so that if I put something else on top of it, it won't make it move. That will prevent it from spinning. If you didn't freeze those, your character could come by and make it spin. So if you, say you froze the Y axis, it could actually spin around in a circle, and we can actually apply physics that makes this box just keep spinning. You could do it that way if you wanted to. That'd be an idea. Okay, so I just froze all of them so that this thing can't move at all. Next thing I'll do is, with it selected, is I will say Add Component, Physics, Box Collider. This will prevent any object from being able to fall right through it. So what I will do next, now that I've made that, is I will go down into my Assets folder and make a new Prefabs folder. And with the Prefabs folder selected, I will drag and drop from the hierarchy right into my Prefabs folder so I can easily make new ones, or additional ones. Yes, we're making it a prefab so we don't have to set up the properties for a second coin box, or a second, whatever your box, your cube is made for, a second crate maybe. The prefabs folder, as we learned last year, stands for prefabricated items, so you can quickly make another one. So now if I drag and drop another cube, I can position this cube on top of the other one. Okay, so just kind of positioning it, and now I will have two of them. Okay? Okay, my second prefabricated item has the exact same properties as the first one. So what I did is I put one on top of the other. I selected the one above and went under constraints and unchecked the X, Y, and Z properties for freeze rotation and freeze position. And then I went back and I checked gravity. Now if I press play, one will fall right on top of the other, showing you that the rigid body does allow it to move, and the box collider does allow it to collide. You'll notice that because my X, Y, and Z properties are not colliding, there's still gravity on that box, and that gravity is actually forcing the cube to constantly keep moving, so it's eventually going to move around it. So we could freeze, you know, more axes to prevent it from moving, but eventually that will move and fall off of that other cube. So that walks you through the process of bringing the project file into Unity from Maya, applying a rigid body so it can move, a box collider so it can collide, and seeing an item that's frozen and an item that's not frozen. Everybody see it fall? There you go. So that is today's video.